If you're pouring your heart into your podcast, but still struggling to turn those listeners into paying clients, I've got something just for you. Imagine having a clear, simple plan to turn your listeners into buyers without relying on a huge audience or spending hours on social media. That's exactly what we'll create together in a podcast profit plan discovery call. During this free 20-minute call, I'll help you discover more opportunities for profit in your podcast and give you the next best step to turn your show into a client attracting machine. If I've got an offer that will help you expedite this process, then we can also discuss working together. Book your free podcast profit plan discovery call now by going to podcastingformoms.co/profit plan or by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to chat with you. Let me guess. You've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now. Maybe months or maybe even years. You've had the name picked out, you've imagined the cover art, and you've even drafted a few episode ideas in your notes app. But for some reason, you haven't actually started because you're waiting to feel ready. Ready with the perfect microphone, ready with the perfect strategy, and ready with the perfect confidence. And if that sounds like you, then this episode is going to be a little bit of tough love, but in the best possible way. Because today we're going to talk about why waiting to feel ready to podcast might be the exact thing that's keeping you stuck. Let's get into it. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, and welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show that helps mom entrepreneurs start, grow, and scale a podcast without adding more chaos to their already full lives. I'm your host, Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist, producer, and someone who has helped a lot of women launch podcasts that actually move their business forward. And here is something that I see all of the time. Brilliant, capable, experienced entrepreneurs who want a podcast, but they keep pushing it off. Not because they're lazy or because they don't care, but because they're waiting to feel ready. And today I want to talk about why that feeling might never actually come and why that's completely okay. So here's the truth that most people don't tell you about podcasting. Almost no one feels ready when they start. Not the big podcasters that you listen to, not the people with thousands of downloads, and not even the people who now teach podcasting. Everyone starts off a little bit unsure. Everyone starts with wondering, will anyone listen? What if I sound awkward? What if I run out of things to say? Or what if I mess up something? Those thoughts are completely normal. But the mistake that so many people make is believing that confidence comes before action. It doesn't. Confidence comes from action. So every month that goes by where you're waiting to feel ready, you're also delaying your visibility, your authority, your audience growth, and the clients who could have found you through your podcast. Because here's something that might surprise you. Your first few podcast episodes don't need to be perfect. They just need to exist. Your podcast is something that improves over time. Your voice gets stronger, your messaging gets clearer, and your delivery gets more natural. But none of that can happen if you never start your podcast. And I see this especially with moms in business. You are already juggling a lot. You have kids, clients, and a house that somehow always needs to be cleaned. So when you're thinking about launching a podcast, it feels like it has to be done perfectly to be worth your time. But podcasting doesn't reward perfection. It rewards consistency. It rewards showing up, and it rewards sharing your voice and your expertise with the people who really need to hear it. And the sooner that you start, the sooner that momentum begins to build. So I want to redefine what ready actually means. So ready does not mean perfect equipment, a perfectly mapped out content calendar, or a perfectly polished speaking style. Ready simply means this: you have something valuable to share. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you already do. You have experiences, lessons, insights, things that could genuinely help someone else. And podcasting is just the vehicle that helps you share that. So one of the things I talk about a lot with my clients is something that I call the minimum viable podcast. So instead of trying to launch the biggest, most complicated podcast possible, we truly focus on launching the simplest version that works. This might look like a basic microphone, a clear podcast message, and 3 to 5 episodes to start. and obviously a commitment to keep showing up. That's it. Because once the podcast is live, then you can refine everything else later. So here's what I want you to hear today. Starting before you feel ready isn't reckless. It's actually how most meaningful things begin. Businesses, creative projects, big life changes. Honestly, for a lot of these things, you rarely feel completely prepared. But you just take that step anyway, and then you figure it out along the way. Podcasting works exactly the same way. So I want to leave you with this question. If you stopped waiting to feel ready, what could your podcast look like a year from now? You could have 50 episodes published, a growing audience, and listeners who trust you, along with clients who found you through your show. But none of that can happen if the podcast stays stuck in the idea stage. So if this episode's hitting a little too close to home, and you know you've been sitting on the podcast idea longer than you'd like to admit, then I would love to invite you to join me inside the 3-day podcast launch bootcamp. This is a free 3-day bootcamp, and it teaches you how to go from idea to fully launched in just 3 days. So to sign up for the free bootcamp, you can head to podcastingformoms.co/bootcamp. Once again, that is podcastingformoms.co/bootcamp. So you can either type that into your browser, or you can find the link to sign up for the bootcamp in the show notes. So if today's episode gave you the push you needed, I want you to take that as your sign. You don't have to feel perfectly ready. You just have to be willing to start. And I promise you, your future podcast host self will be really glad that you did. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you next time. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.